Ipapakita lang ako sa inyo. Alright, kita na ba screen ko?
Yes po.
Alright. Okay, so basically, sa natitira nating Synchronous, no, for week 9, which is on Monday, medyo madami tayong presenters. So, kind of expect that we'll go past 5, no? Beyond 5 o'clock. Now, I have one concern here. Kasi yung kay Alfred McCoy na social history, no? Yung transformation, social transformations. Marami akong chapters ng book na yun na in-extract. And so, yung mga hindi na-report na parts, well, that would be my fault since naibigay ko lang yung general title without the exact chapters na dapat sana ay for week 6. Ngayon, here's the thing. For week 9, gusto kong ma-discuss siya. And so, may bakante tayong isang reading dito. Title is The Changing Nature of Cebu Urban Elite in the 19th Century. So you may check this on the folder ng week 9. Okay? What I need now is I need one volunteer to present this one. Kasi si Angkot na hindi nakapag-present nung kay Cortez, nilipat ko na lang siya dito sa isang chapter. Title is Changing Human Ecology on the Central Luzon Plain, may paisikan. Now, I want another volunteer naman for the chapter titled The Changing Nature of Cebu Urban Elite in the 19th Century. So context yung reading na yan ay medyo family history. So it talks about certain families as a major point of local history. Ayun. So, any volunteer para masulat ko na kagad yung pangalan? Bago tayo magsimula, I would need a volunteer for this. Bakit ako lumalabo? For week 9 pa naman to, no? So, that means it's for Monday. Any volunteer, especially sa mga nakapag-present na. Kasi basically, natawag ng lahat to. Come on, 3-3. Isang reading na lang yan. Okay, mag 1 minute na, wala pa din sumasagot. Anyone? Alright. Thank you, Nieva. Okay. So, Nieva will take care of presenting that. Thank you for volunteering. Okay, sige. We may begin with the presentations, para matapos din tayo. So, we will have how many presenters for today? 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 presenters lang. Alright? Sige po. Let's begin with Mustasa. So, we'll also just display the video. Thanks.
Hello, nakikita po ba?
Yes po, try playing it kung marinig yung sound.
Okay po, audio quality.
We're not hearing anything. Ako sa part ko. Kayo ba?
Wait lang, sir.
Good day everyone, ako nga pala si
Ayan, sir, okay na po ba?
Yes, that's better.
Dimas Taza at ang aking tatalakayin ay State of the Philippines in 1810 by Thomas de Comi. Mayroong mahigit 100 elements gaya ng events, culture, products at iba pa na makikita sa State of the Philippines in 1810 na ngayon ay nakikita nyo sa screen. Mula sa mahigit na 100 elements na ito ay pumili lamang ako ng 5 tatalakayin. First is the origin of race. The original race that populated in Philippines as well as Sumatra, Java, Borneo, and other islands in the vast archipelago is without a doubt the Malayans. The Philippine Islanders, in contrast to the Malabars whose features are characterized by great regularity, sweetness, and even beauty, resemble the latter only in color, but they outnumber them in stature and limb proportions. The indigenous population of the capital has become a mixture of all kinds of nations and features, or rather a degeneration from the primal races, as a result of its constant communication with the Chinese and other Asiatics, with the seafarers of all nations, with the soldiery and Mexican criminals, who are generally mestizos and are sent to the islands in large numbers every year in the manner of transportation. Second is Manila's population. Manila, the capital of the Philippine Islands, during that time has the population of 140 to 150,000 people of all classes. However, it should be noted that the populous suburbs of Santa Cruz, San Fernando, Binondo, Tondo, Quiapo, San Sebastian, San Anton, and Sampaloc are included in this calculation. For while each is considered a separate town with its own curate and civil magistrate, subsequential towns of Santa Cruz, San Fernando, Binondo, and Tondo. Also, at that time, several of the major provincial towns have populations of 20 to 30,000 people. Third is increasing culture. Whatever the causes of this apparent backwardness since the establishment of the Philippine Company in these islands, and as a result of the efforts of some of the directors to promote the cultivation of indigo, which was at the time little known, the natives have gradually become reconciled to it, and have discovered it to be one of the most adventurous branches of industry, despite the fact that it requires some labor and exposed to the elements. Fourth is the Philippine Farmers. The third group is made up of the majority of mestizos and locals, and it is this group that makes up the majority of farm owners. All other natives who generally own a small strip of land situated around their dwellings or at the extremities of the various towns and settlements formed by the conquerors may be included in the fourth and final category. Besides what they may have inherited from their forefathers in the form of legal inheritance, which rights have been confirmed to them by the current sovereign of the colony. Fifth is aids to agriculture. It will, without a doubt, dispel some of the Filipinos' mistrust when the superior government's new and paternal efforts to ameliorate its current situations are fully known, and when that valuable portion of our distant population is assured that their rights will be respected in the future, and that the exactions and compulsory that had previously disheartened them will be completely abolished. And on the other hand, the living example and fresh energy transmitted to the provinces by other families emigrating and settling there, nourished in the spirit and principles of those reforms and the ideals of maxims of an administration by which the current era is distinguished will provide a new stimulus. Practical participation in these benefits will almost certainly awaken a spirit of enterprise and emulation that will be extremely beneficial to agriculture. And as the natives' needs grow in
Recording in
proportion to their
progress.
ability to know and compare the comforts arising from the present and extension on conveniences and luxuries in their own towns, they will naturally be led to possess and adopt them.
All right. Thank you, Angelo, for sharing. Okay, so first comment ko sa presentation ni Mustafa is that it lacks analysis. No? That's my major concern kasi wala siya na-present na takeaways. So basically what happened was nag-nitpick lang siya ng parts ng reading tapos pinresent niya na aspects. So let's try to make sense of the reading. No? What was it about and how significant is that particular source, no, in understanding the 18th century the 19th century Philippines. First of all, Thomas de Pugin is an important source, no, of a view of a foreigner towards the Philippines na hindi nanggaling sa Kastila. Bakit importante yung pagkakaroon ng source, no? Isang perspective ng isang foreigner about the Philippines na hindi nanggagaling sa Kastila. First and foremost, that's important kasi mas less yung bias na maaari natin makita when analyzing such sources. Pag kasi masyado tayong nag-rely sa mga sources written by Spaniards about the Philippines, you would normally expect na punong-puno ng prejudice and the racial bias yung commentaries ng mga Kastila, with a few exceptions, of course. So, having such reading as nagkakaroon tayo ng ibang angulo as to what the Philippines was like in the eyes of a foreigner na hindi racial prejudice or kung meron man siyang racial prejudice, no, undertones lang siya. It's not totally as explicit as how in other sources appear to be, especially those written by friars or by Spanish civil officials. Now, let's go to the content. State of the Philippines in 1810, importante din para makita what was the precedent ng Pilipinas bago natin pasukin yung pagsali sa global market ng raw materials. If you would remember, at nakakatapos lang itong pagpasok ng 18th century. Can anyone tell the class? Ano yung major phenomena or major feature of Spanish colonization kakatapos lang nitong mga panahon na ito? Ako basic to mga bata. Ano yun?
Ano po yun, sir?
Anong major event or anong major phenomenon katatapos lang ng pagpasok ng 18th century? So by the time 19th century, by the time na 1800s na, katatapos lang ng napaka-importanting pangyayari na to na nag-last for hundreds of years.
Sir, yung Spanish ano po ba to? Spanish colonization? Charot.
1800s. 1896 nag-end ang Spanish colonization. Clue, nagsimula ng 1565.
Polo y servicios po.
Ako, insito ha. Ako 3-3, ano?
Sir, yung ano po ba yan? Yung voyage around the world?
No. No. Nagsimula ng 1565. 1565.
Galleon
Nagtapos-
trade.
Very good. It's the galleon trade. Okay? So, ano yung makukuha natin mula sa galleon trade? No? The galleon trade signifies how Spain helped in the underdevelopment of our economy. So dahil outward yung yung pagtingin nila sa ekonomiya, no? Hindi nag-improve yung rural conditions in the Philippines. Hindi nag-improve yung ating agricultural production at na-realize lang nila yung mga bagay ito by the time na pumasok yung 1800s, kung kailan mataas na yung demand at mataas na yung competition for raw materials. So when the galleon trade ended, nag-shift yung focus ng Spanish colonial administration sa inward development. For us to be able to participate in the global trade of certain goods that we can produce like coffee, sugar, rice, copra, and many other things. So, interesting tong accounting kasi crucial yung 1810 para makita yung transition natin from a colony nakafocus sa pagiging daanan o ruta lang ng kalakalan into a colony that attempted or that would attempt to become self-sufficient. Okay? So, ang dami-dami natin napupulot. At the same time, pinakamaganda makukuha natin mula dito sa mga accounts kagaya ng Tito Min ay yung description ng mga tao. So from these accounts, we can somehow extract a social history of the people under Spain. What was their life like? How they lived, no? At the same time, makita natin anong dynamics ng lipunan by the time these foreigners had witnessed yung context na yun, yung panahon na yun. Okay? Kaya po, huwag kakalimutan na tingnan yung mga sources kagaya ng Comin, Fyodor Habor, John Bowring, if you're going to talk about the Spanish period ng Pilipinas, especially during the 19th century. Kasi, again, their views are way different and more detailed compared to those of a typical Spaniard. Okay? Alright. So, sige. Let's move on to the next presenter. Let's call Francisco.
Hello.
You're audible.
Good afternoon. Ayun, ang represent ko po ay An Anarchy of Families, State and Family in the Philippines by Alfred W. McCoy. Tayo. The Philippine oligarchy at the turn of the 21st century. As revolutions, empires, and regimes have come and gone over the past 2 centuries, the Filipino oligarchy has survived from generation to generation, amassing ever greater wealth and power with every twist in this tangled national history. With each passing decade, the country's juxtaposition of private wealth and public squalor seems somehow more pronounced, lending added significance to this entrenched belief as the key element in a relentless social stasis. Since the state has proven ineffective in its economic regulation, one analyst argues that the actual path of growth emerged from the economic and political behavior of the most powerful families, which had been accumulating capital for several generations. So basically, from generation to generation, yun pa rin, wala nagbabago. Nag-survive pa rin yung mga makapangyarihan, nakagawa pa rin sila ng mga paraan para yumaman pa rin, ayun nga relentless social stasis eh. So, wala nagbabago. Naka-standstill lang. Yung mayaman pa rin. Yung mayaman lalo. Yung mahirap pa rin. Hindi nagbabago eh. So, ineffective yung regulation ng state kasi namin nakahandle ng mga oligarchy. Makapangyarihan talaga. Dami nila nagagawa na sobrang nag-a-add sa power nila sa bansa. Historical origins. Although Spanish colonials restricted Filipino participation in governance, their colonial regime presided over a period of marked growth in the mid-19th century that by default is nothing else. Enriched Filipino landholders and urban merchants. As the export economy expanded after 1820, the Spanish colony forfeited its economic leaders of the British and American merchants who worked with Filipino provincial elites. Many of them Chinese mestizos in exporting sugar and hemp. During the 19th century, the emerging Filipino elite, in its formative landholding phase, practiced an ungenerative, even parasitic form of capitalism that, as Hans Bobeck argues, featured a refinement of extraction rather than a rationalization of production. Instead, producing profit by means of innovation, these rent capitalists increased the rate of extraction from the tenants, raising tenths to 70% of the harvest and interest rates for crop loans to 100%. Ayun, so as I said over the generations, nakagawa pa rin sila ng paraan para makasurvive at makagawa ng paraan para maman pa rin sila. Ayun nga. So, sa Spanish period, ayun nga. As I said, Filipino landholders sa urban merchants. Mga kilala na, pinaka-prominent alam natin yung mga mayaman Chinese mestizos na ever since nandito na sa atin na nag-export. So ito, isa rin sa mga alam na rin natin ayun, pagrenta sa lupa, which is sobrang ina-abuse ng mga landlord. Sobrang nahihirapan ng mga tao. Which is, until now, alam pa rin natin. Crony capitalism. To understand the rise of the oligarchs and the decline of the democratic institutions that roil this infant republic, we need to examine three social forces that shape this process: persistent rent-seeking, the weakening of political patronage, and the centrality of intra-elite context under the Philippine Republic and the Marcos dictatorship. Dominant sectors of the Philippine youth engaged in aggressive rent-seeking. Successive Philippine presidents used states' licensing powers as bargaining chips with national and provincial elites, thereby creating rents that favor these dominant families. By the mid-1960s, this system was collapsing as the nation's economic strategy of import substitution industries, or ISI, would no longer provide employment for a large generation of secondary and university graduates. Simultaneously, the system of political patronage diluted to a thin Google by soaring population failed to deliver essential services to most voters. So another part of landlords na aggressive rent seeking, ang dami ulit nahihirapan. Tapos nag-favored lang talaga dito mga dominant powerful families na sa mga probinsya na malaki yung mga na-handle na lupa. Kasi sila lang yung nakakaramdam ng ginawa sa buhay. Alang iba, hihirapan. Kasi iba walang trabaho. Continuity. The element of elite continuity was soon evident in the administration of Marcos' rival and successor Cory Aquino. Amid the high political drama of Marcos' flight into exile, President Aquino took power in February 1986 with contradictory political agendas. A mandate for change in a personal plan for restoring the status quo ante Marcos, Mindful of the abuses of the Marcos era, Aquino's Constitutional Commission adopted articles designed to break for all time the influence of political dynasties through both universal term limits and the specific prohibition of relatives within the fourth civil degree of the president holding any public office. Despite these aspirations, in her first year as president, Aquino restored both provincial dynasties as political office and Manila's oligarchs to control leading corporations. Yun. After na-exile si Marcos, ay alam na natin na si Cory yung pumalit. Many thought na ito na yung pagbabago. Ito na yung tutulong sa mga tao, pero di pala. Ano lang, different leader pero same problems pa rin. Contradictory political agendas na papaguhin daw yung papaguhin doon na para sa tao na pero doon pa rin eh. Like, sa oligarchs, political families, political dynasties, sila pa rin yung mga nabalik pa rin sa kanila yung power nila na malaki yung influence. So wala lang. Kung wala lang din, parang pasad lang yun na sinasabi lang na magbabago pero ganun pa rin eh. Control pa rin sa leading corporations, sa lupa, etc. Okay. Sir, wait lang po, nag-yolo ko po. In the post-Marcos era, syndicate crime emerged from society's margins to become, for the first time, a visible force in the country's politics. In the case that followed Marcos' fall, vice syndicates flourished, and senior police protected these criminals in exchange for a share of the take, making Manila a metropolis akin Shanghai in the 1930s or Havana in the 1950s, where criminal bosses exercised enormous influence. In Luzon, large gambling syndicates that operated the illegal wedding lottery and were protected by the constabulary grew to unprecedented size and power. In metropolitan Manila, powerful robbery gangs began to hit banks with military precision, getting away with millions of pesos between 1989 and 1990. Professional kidnap gangs, several linked to senior constabulary force officers, launched a wave of kidnapping against...
Angelo, excuse
Sir, hello po. Hello po.
Can you lead us to your analysis of the reading instead of reading certain excerpts of the article? Yeah, like every time we go to a certain slide kasi it's just read and explain. So it would be better if you're just explaining instead of actually reading. Thank you.
Hi. Also, sir, so paano po? Sir, hello po.
Just explain the part. Just explain the part. Don't read it as it is.
Okay.
Kasi we're seeing it as well.
Okay, sige sir. Ayun, so crime naman. So basically this explains na si post-Marcos era, nag-emerge na yung mga crime syndicates na kilalang naman na mga drug lords, ganun. Which is hanggang ngayon meron pa rin naman. So sobrang laki ng mga influence talaga nila in power pati na rin sa politics kasi tutulungan din sila ng mga ibang wealthy families eh. mutual tawag dito. Mutual silang nagbe-benefit dun sa ginagawa nila parehas. Bibigyan sila ng share sa pera, tapos tulungan din nila yung mga families in politics or in anything else. Tapos, ayun din, yung mga madalas din, yung mga officers din na dapat nanguhuli. Kasi sila rin yung nakikinabang din. Ingat, may nakukuha rin sila na part dun sa tawag dito, sa operations overall. Ayun lang. Ayun, so over the years na tumatagal, humihina na yung patronage networks. Nung dumating na sa Pilipinas yung mga VCR, nakakapanood na ng mga tao ng TV, ganun. Mas nakikita na ngayon yung mga kilalang tao na mga celebrities tsaka mga athletes. So, doon na papasok yung mga celebrities tsaka mga athletes na tumatakbo sa politics. Ginagamit yung pagiging sikat nila at yung influence nila na para manalo. Which is, ayun nga, hanggang ngayon, alam naman na natin yun. Karamihan naman ng mga tao, di na pinapansin masyado yun eh. Kasi, yung mga celebrities sa mga athletes na yun, yung career nila yung nagiging basehan eh. Naging maganda, gano'n. Yun yung nagiging basehan ng mga tao in voting them. So that's basically it with celebrities. Yun. So conclusion, looking back on everything on this article, wala talaga eh. Magpapatuloy pa rin at magpapatuloy na paghahari ang mga oligarchs. Kasi nga eh, by generation, nakagawa pa rin sila ng paraan pa to survive and to manipulate the situation kung saan sila pa rin yung on top. At ayun nga eh, very deep-rooted kasi yung problem. So, kahit ano pa yung tumagal, sila pa rin yung mag-hold ng power at influence over politics at business. So, unless we pull out the roots of the problem, ayun nga, yung masyadong nibigyan ng kapangyarihan yung mga families na sobrang lalaki talaga ng influence of power. And hanggat hindi pa rin sila tatanggalan ng kapangyarihan, papatuloy pa rin ito. Kahit sino pong mga presidente sa generation ng umunsad. Ayun lang po.
Alright. So, here's a question for Angelo.
Yes, sir.
Bakit anarchy of families yung title?
Ayun sir, kasi anarchy, meaning nun eh, walang kinikilala na government at na nag-govern ng power. Ayun din, mga
So,
political
bakit
families.
anarchy of families?
Ayun, kasi hindi sila nakuhold ng governing power eh. Sila mismo yung nag-i-influence ng kapangyarihan nila sa government at sa mga tao. Kaya nag-hold ng malaking influence sa lupa, sa mga corporations, politics, drug cartels.
Okay. Thanks. Sige, Shamir, yes, what can you add?
Hello po sir. Bali, share ko lang po yung insight nung binasa po namin yung libro na to. Bali, kapansin-pansin po dito na yung nabasa po kasi ni Angelo ay dun lang po sa part po ni doon lang po sa unang part. So balik makikita po dito yung pagkakaroon po ng isang buong imahe po ng politika na meron sa Pilipinas at higit po nakapansin-pansin dito yung paggamit po ng textual analysis na metodo ng mga manunulat po nung sanaysay ng librong ito kung saan kinasasangkutan po ng pagdadalumat sa mga batis tulad po ng liham, journal article at mga pananaliksik, pahayagan, archival documents at even po yung mga government documents upang makapagbigay po sila ng masusing pagdadalumat sa mga salik na naka-impluensya at nang maunawaan po ng lubos yung ugnayan po ng mga tao at lipunan kung saan nga po dun sa binabanggit po na crime ni Angelo kanina, meron pong part sa libro ng Anarchy of the Families na ginagamit po ng mga Duranos yung kanilang kapangyarihan para po mas makontrol yung politika sa partikular na lugar kung saan po sila nagahari. Kaya po sa palagay ko rin, kaya po siya pinamagatan na Anarchy of Families dahil instead of government na elected by people na may freedom, mas nangingibabaw po dito yung impluensya ng kapangyarihan, ng pananakot, ng karahasan over the community. Kaya po nagkakaroon ng kaguluhan doon sa nabubuong pamahalaan na meron po tayo. Tapos share ko lang din po, last na, dito ko rin po nabasa na si Imelda Marcos po yung nagpatanggal dun sa apo ni Pardo de Tavera na current General Secretary ng isang parang lung center research po yun dati sa atin dito sa Pilipinas. Yun po yung kinatatayuan ngayon ng lung center, heart center, and kidney center of the Philippines. Ayun po.
Alright, thank you, Angelo. So, yeah, yun yung gist nung work din ako. It's the idea of the anarchy of families. Anarchy in a sense that walang government. Tama. Kasi, diba nabanggit ko last meeting sa usapin na, hindi naman ito eksklusibo sa isang bansa o sa ilang lugar. There's a certain pattern, no? In almost every country, almost every place, no? Na whoever holds or whoever controls the economy shall control the rest. Okay? At dito natin makikita na napaka-significant ng naging role ng elite, Filipino families from the onset of colonization until the very contemporary times that we're facing. Kasi it is through them, no, na nasakop tayo effectively kasi nakapag-collaborate sila sa mga natin. And it is also through them why we're experiencing many troubles in our society today because they influence the policies, they influence the government. No? At kamag-anak din nila yung na-elect na upo na nagkakaroon ng power to control things simply because they have the wealth, they have the power. So, yes, until this very moment, we are under the anarchy of families. Kasi kung titignan natin, bakit punta tayo sa agricultural sector, bakit hindi natin ma-liberate ang magsasaka? Bakit hindi natin ma-transform yung ating agricultural landscape? It's because of the factories. No? Landowners, the land-owning class, yung ineffective na land distribution, all of these things contribute to the woes of our agricultural sectors, leading to what we experience, no, in our food supply, chain of food security. So dugtong-dugtong yan. Hindi lang po yan nag-a-apply sa agricultural sector. It goes everywhere. Okay? So, kapagigising, kapamulat ng akda ni Makoy. Kasi you will realize na at the end of the day, no matter who we vote for, no matter who we support for, we are pawns of the oligarchs. We are pawns of the powerful people na we have no power over it. Okay? And so, dito pumapasok pagka-justify ng inequality sa atin. Bakit mataas ang inequality sa atin? Because we allow these things to happen. No? Kaya po, kapag may mga ganitong sigurang structural dapat ang pag-aayos. No? Sinabi natin structural, hindi ito masasolve ng corruption, hindi ito masasolve ng pagpapalit lang ng nakaupo. No? It's supposed to start from the change the entire structure. And by that time, yun pa lang talaga slowly may dismantle yung inequality na na-experience natin. Alright. Now, yun na yung pinaka-point ng anarchy of families. No? Ang main takeaway lang natin ay huwag natin kakalimutan yung keyword na ano yung keyword? Pagdating sa usapin ng anarchy of families. Keyword is collaboration. So bakit collaboration? Collaboration kasi ito yung pinaka naging survival approach ng mga elite families para manatili pa din yung power and influence nila even under colonialism by actively helping and participating in colonial policies of the government. No? These policies were effectively laid, they're effectively applied, and so we are all under the same enemy. Okay? So, sa part ng mga elite, as they are protecting their interests, they're protecting their status, no? Andun sila sa point na they can, turn their backs on their fellow men para lamang mapanatili yung kinalalagyan nila. And that did not only happen under the Spaniards, it also continued and even proliferated under the Americans. Kaya kung ikukumpara natin yung Spanish period sa American period class, bakit parang mas successful yung mga Amerikano sa pag-colonize sa atin kumpara sa mga Kastila? Anong basis ko for saying that? Between the two, sino yung mas may lasting influence sa atin ngayon? Sino yung mas may cordial tayong relationship? Sino yung hanggang sa ngayon ay nakaka-influence pa din sila sa ating internal policies? It's the US. Okay? Kasi the US use a different approach in colonizing us and hindi ito magiging successful kung hindi mag-partake ang iba. Okay? Shamil, yes, what would you like to add?
Bali sir, dagdag ko lang po dun sa naging transition po natin from Spaniards to Americans. Isa po dun sa specific na nakita namin sa research po namin sa methodology dati is yung yung sa pagsasaka. Kasi po nagkakaroon po ng utang na loob yung mga magsasaka po dun sa kanilang mga Panginoong may lupa. Kaya po nung yung mga Amerikano nag-i-introduce na po ng government sa atin, yung mga Amerikano po is parang pinare-pare or parang kinaibigan po nila yung mga mayayaman na pamilya sa Pilipinas. Kung kaya ang nangyari po nun ay mas lalong lumakas po yung mga mayayaman. Tapos parang mas lalong naging maganda po yung image nila sa mga mahihirap. Kasi nga po parang nung time na yun, di ba yung maputi po or ay parang mas nakakataas, mas matalino, mas magaling, so lagi silang tama. Kaya po yung mga tao na bukod sa may utang na loob, nagkaroon po sila lalo ng malinaw na pagtingin sa mga mayayaman bilang kanilang magiging daan po para sa kanilang pag-angat sa buhay without knowing na yung mga human rights nila bilang tao is nasasagasaan o hindi na ibibigay sa kanila ng tama. Kaya po later, pagpasok ng 20th century to 21st century, nagpatuloy na po yung paghahari ng ilang mga pamilya na nagsimulang italaga po ng mga Amerikano nung sa pagbubuo po natin ng civil government. Ayun po.
Well said. Tama naman ang points, no? So, reiterate natin, Shamir, yung mga nabanggit ko kanina, especially with how the families were heavily involved in series of colonialisms that we have experienced. Alright, so bago tayo dumako doon sa last two presenters, I guess 5-minute break muna tayo. No? We'll have Gato to present to us kwentong bayan ng panahon ng hapon, everyday life in time of war, Professor Quintanao, Aquino, and Ma'am Camagay. No? Then we'll end with Indona, no? Ilocano responses to American aggression. William Henry Scott. Alright, so time check, it's 4:26. We'll be back by 4:30. Okay? Thank you. All right, hello. Okay, so sige, let's continue. No, Marilu, can you start presenting?
Good afternoon po. And po. Good day po. Ang tabi po na napunta po sa akin ay ang librong Kwentong Bayan noong panahon ng Hapon, Everyday Life in a Time of War. Next po. Next po. And ito po yung next po is the authors and their brief information. First was si Dr. Clement Aquino. She was a professor emeritus of English and Comparative Literature at UP Diliman. She received her Bachelor of Arts degree in UP Diliman, Master of Arts from Northwestern University, and PhD from Stanford University. She published numerous books and articles in the fields of Southeast Asian literature, women's studies, literary translation, and the arts. Her works has earned her various awards, including one for achievements in the humanities from the National Research Council of the Philippines in 1998. Second po is si Dr. Clement Aquino. Currently, professor po siya ng Sociology in College of Social Science and Philosophy and faculty affiliate of the Tri-College Philippines Studies Program of the University of the Philippines, Diliman. She holds an AB Sociology cum laude in 1979 and Master of Arts in Sociology in 1984 from University of the Philippines, Diliman, and a Doctor of Philosophy in Sociological Studies in 1990 from University of Sussex in the United Kingdom. Next pa si Dr. Patricia Arinto. She is also a professor and a former dean of the University of the Philippines Open University. She's currently the dean of the UPBPC or University of the Philippines Visayas Tacloban College. Next is si Dr. Maria Luisa T. Camagay, PhD. She is a professor emeritus in the Department of History, the University of the Philippines, Diliman. She graduated from the University of the Philippines with an undergraduate degree in education, major in history. She received her Master of Arts in She received her Master of Arts in Teaching, Social Studies at the same university. Her research interests are history of women, urban. Next po. Yan po. I-discuss ko po sa inyo yung part ng Dr. Clement Aquino, which is the Doing Social History, is researching everyday life in the Philippines during the Japanese period, 1941 to 1945. Next po. Ito po part ay nakapokus sa history ng social conditions during Japanese occupation sa Pilipinas. Mas nakatuon ang pansin nito sa social conditions rather than political aspect during that time. Nabanggit po ng author dito na marami nang nakapagsagawa ng pag-aaral kaugnay sa pangyari ng World War II at pati sa pananakop ng Hapon sa Pilipinas. Ngunit kapansin-pansin na ang mga ito ay nakatuon lamang sa military and political na tema. And nabanggit din ng author na may ilan ding naisulat patungkol sa kabayanihan ginawa ng mga sundalo at guerrilla na lumabas sa giyera laban sa mga Hapon. Kaya naman, yung mga author ng libang ito ay nabuhayan sila ng interes upang alamin at mas resistent pa ang mga ang mga kagalapang nangyayari sa panahon ng Hapon sa ating bansa. So, they look for some participants na talagang nakaranas at nakaligtas sa pangmamalupit ng mga Hapon. They ask them to contribute on special topics such as the outbreaks of the war and the effect on them and their communities, the battle for liberation from the Japanese, at kung paano sila at ng pamilya nila napatal sa nangyaring kaganapan. They call their participants as the ordinary people. Literal na ordinary talaga kasi sila po yung mga hindi politicians, policy makers, published writers, mga professional historians, in short, mga siyempre mamayan lamang ng Pilipinas. Next. po. Thank you. In the related literature po, in 1990s, during the 5th anniversary of the war, more survivors decided to break their silence and write down their experiences. Kahit mga masakit para sa kanila, alalahanin yung kanilang kinalasan. Ilan po sa mga nailimbag na libro patungkol sa kananasan ng mga Pilipinas sa kamay ng mga Hapon ay ang mga sumusunod. Una po yung The Breaking Silence ni Lourdes Montinola, published in 1996. This one was an attempt of the author to recollect as much as she can the life story of her father, Nicanor Reyes. Particularly po, during the war years when her father died from the hands of the Japanese. Nagalaman po ito ng mga journal entries niya patungkol sa pagmasakay sa kanyang pamilya at sa kanya bilang nag-iisang survivor sa nasabing kaganapan. Next is Living with the Enemy, a diary of the Japanese occupation by Pasita Paghanyo, published in 1999. This one naman po ay from the author's diary kung saan nakalaha dito yung day by day na pangyayari sa buhay niya at pati ng kaganapan sa Manila. Bilang doon naman siya nakatira noong panahon ng pananakop ng mga Hapon. Third, it took 4 years for the Rising Sun to set, 1931 to 1945, by Joaquin Garcia, published in 2001. This one naman po ay personal account ng author since naabutan niya yung panahon ng Hapon sa ating bansa. Sinalagay niya dito ang mga pangyayaring kanyang nasaksihan at naabutan ngunit kabilang din dito sa isinulat niya ang mga pagsusulat mga refleksyon ngayon sa gawa tungkol sa Japanese occupation. Next is Under Japanese Rule, Memoirs and Reflections, edited and with an introduction by Renato Constantino. This book is made up of 4 essays, each are written from different perspectives. Then, ilan pa sa mga nasagaong pag-aalay ang The Philippine Under Japan Occupation Policy and Action, 1999, edited by Ikehata Setsuho and Ricardo Tiote, and Kasaysayan, Volume 7, The Japanese Occupation by Ricardo Tiote. Next po, sa research methodology po, may dalawa dyan, kwentong kasalita at kwentong pasulat. Ang mga author po kasi ng mga libro ay nagsagawa ng interview sa piling mga tao from Dolores, Quezon, and sa ilang lugar sa Pampanga at Bulacan, kung saan nagbigay po sila ng mga open-ended questionnaires. Walang limit kaya malaya mga ito na ilahad ng mga pangyayari sa kanilang panahon ng panahon ng Hapon. Bali, in this way, papasok rin dito ang kwentong pasat. Kung kaya't ina-highlight ng author dito na ang pag-combine ng methodology ginamit na ay isang advantage po dahil nakakaabot ang kanilang proyekto sa mas malawak na rin ng mga tao at na nagmumula sa iba't ibang panig ng Pilipinas. So, mas malaking saklaw, mas maraming ma-reach out na pwedeng maging participant sa interview. Then, sa life history as a framework, dahil nga po sa ang libro ay papatok sa everyday lives ng Pilipino under Japanese rule, kaya naman talagang irilapat sa konsepto ng life history. Inilahad ng author dito na itong proyekto nilang ito ay itong libro nga po na ito ay modeled in parts of the Mass Observation Project, kasi this Mass Observation Project is aiming to create a documentary record of everyday life in Swedish society as it is experienced and reported not by the media or professional commentators but by ordinary people in their own written words. Kahalintulad po sa kung ano ang kanilang layunin sa pagsagawa ng librong ito. Also, na-highlight din ng author dito yung pag-adapt nila sa ginagawang kaugalian ng mga Pilipino sa pagbabahagi ng impormasyon. Ito po yung pagkwento or kasi nga syempre mas madali nga naman komportable kung mas komportable mag-share ng information kung yung way ay pakwento kaysa parang nag-uulat, especially that majority of the participants ng librong ito ay nasa 60s and 70s na. Next po. Thank you. Some issues and concerns, memories and truth-telling. Although nabanggit po ng author dito na ang participants na kinuha nila ay kumbaga truly reliable, however, nagbanggit pa rin ang author sa part na to ng mga possibilities na maaaring kaharapin sa pagsagawa ng oral interviews. Also, ninote din niya na paano nga ba malalaman kung ang sasabi ng tao in interview mo ay totoo? Kasi di ba, dahil maaaring namang remember ng isang tao ang isang pangyari, lalo na kung sobrang tagalan nitong nangyari. Or pwede rin dada ng labis na trauma ay nagbabago rin yung kanyang alaalang binabago sa mga nag-interview. Also, in the research relationship, one issue in social science research is the power relationship between the researcher and his and her respondents, wherein the researcher controls the research design, interprets the data, and decides how it is to be used, while the respondents are passive participants with no say on anything pertaining to the research except for the information that is extracted from them. Next po. Thank you. This part of book concerned with the social conditions rather than the political aspects. Banggit ko nga po kanina, mas nakatuon ang mga authors sa perspektiba patungkol sa mas detailed kaganapan at impact ng pananakop ng mga Hapon sa Pilipino, specifically ng mga ordinary person. This source is focused to the documenting and analyzing their lives during Japanese occupation based on personal accounts and interviews, including po yung accounts of real people who witnessed the brutality of war in the Philippines. So, mas na-emphasize po talaga dito ang struggles of the ordinary people. The researchers need to be patient and gentle, not manipulative and aggressive. The researchers must practice and develop specific interviewing skills, including sensitivity to interviewers, hesitation, doubts, and fear and fears. Pati na rin, need din po ng mga researchers ang pag-alam sa kung kailan na mag-i-investigate at kung kailan pansamantalang mabaguhin ng paksa. Dapat din itong magkaroon ng kamalayan sa pangangailangan maglabas ng mga sensitibong paksa sa parang hindi nagbabantaw o naghihimas sa privacy ng respondent. Ayun lamang po. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Marie. So, first thing, I like the way package the ideas sa book. Then, of course, yung bulletin, it just compresses the important things na we need to know about the source and what you did was good. Now, tama, itong output na ito, itong kwentong bayan, tungkol sa Second World War, ay isang extensive project which involves oral and written histories, combining narratives from survivors of the war who are still alive today, and diaries of either people who are still living, or those who died during the Second World War. So dito natin makikita na in writing the history of the Second World War, sobrang significant source na diaries. Okay? Ano ba yung pinakakilala source na widely read siya, widely available about the Second World War? Of course, it's Anne Frank, right? But of course, that piece speaks of the experience of Jewish people like Anne Frank na kalanas ng Holocaust. So, ibang usapin naman ang Second World War pagdating dito sa atin sa Asia, considering na nasa Pilipinas tayo, at tayo ay isa sa mga pinaka-devastated din na Asian countries sa panahon iyon. So, bakit po diaries or bakit mga personal narratives yung pinaka-nangibabaw sources ng panahon na ito? Ano kayang meron? Bakit bumaba dito yung ating mga historian sa mga ganitong uri ng sources? Anyway. Sige, siya.
Siguro po sir, dahil sa culture. Kasi po, kadalasan naman din po, kung ano po yung nakikita ng mata, nararanasan ng isang tao, ganun din po yung isinusulat niya, na kadalasan po makikita, hindi lang po sa isang manunulat, kung hindi sa iba rin pong mga manunulat po na sa isang lugar or sa isa pong bansa. So sa palagay ko po, makatutulong po kasi na matukoy yung ugnayan ng tao or nung lokal po na kinabibilangan ng mga tao na yun para maunawaan ano po yung meron dun sa kultura, tradisyon na meron sila at nang mas maunawaan po yun. Kasi may mga bagay po na hindi po natin nauunawaan agad-agad unless may galing po tayo dun sa lugar at alam natin yung kwento. May mga iba nga po tayong mga katutubo na ang kanila pong yung kanila pong mga tradisyon ay pinapasa po sa bibig po, yung pasalin, kinakabisado. Ayan po, oral traditions na ipinapasa-pasa. So, ganun po yung sa palagay, sa kultura po tradisyon.
Okay. Thank you, Shamir. Sige, let's hear from Remy na. Process ko yung thoughts mo after yung salita lang.
Ayun sir, kaya po siguro mas nagagamit po yung diaries that time kasi di ko po sure sir pero alam ko po dinestroy ng Japanese people yung mga sources. Pwede po nating maging sources and unlike po nung American era na marami tayong makukuhang mga government records or any documents, ang nagiging source, halos majority po ng source lang natin pagdating nung war po. Talaga diaries po at saka testimonies ng mga tao kasi yun nga, ang alam ko po dinestroy po ng Japanese people yung ibang sources na pwede nating mapagkunan.
Alright. Okay, so I appreciate your points, no? Tama naman kayo, Philip. But we have to focus dun sa situation, right? Bakit importante ang mga diaries, personal narratives, sources of wartime? No? Kasi madalas kahit anong tigmaan, talagang diary yung magiging reliable source mo. Sir, bakit hindi official documents? Bakit hindi mga official reports coming from the government? The answer is, most of these accounts, of course, are definitely one-sided. No? Since it's wartime, magkalaban sila, definitely you have to put sources from official records, no, into much scrutiny kumpara sa mga narratibo na binibigay lamang ng mga ordinaryong tao. Okay? Why? Kasi when you look at, halimbawa, sa side ng mga Americans, gumamit ka ng official American records to discuss the Second World War. What you will only be able to write is how the war happened sa perspective ng mga Amerikano. If you now look into the Japanese sources, makikita mo naman ano yung naging strategy nila on how to survive the war, how to fight the Americans during the war. But where are we going to get the social history? No? Wala sa mga sources na yun. Wala tayong makukuha na. Meron lang tayong malilikang mga assumptions based sa mga policies na in-implement nila. Pero the question is, ano naman yung feedback? What were the experiences of the people? What were the burdens that they have to face aside from the fact that they're in a war? So, yung mga bagay na yun ay extract natin kapag we make use of diaries and personal accounts. Okay? Kaya po, napaka-importante ng diary sa sunod-sunod panahon. Idagdag pa natin na isang factor din bakit hindi masyadong gamit yung mga conventional sources sa pagsusulat ng kasaysayan ng digmaan ay control din sa media ay ang kung sino man po nananaig during the war. Okay? So, yung communication nila, kailangan nila alter, kailangan nila manang ng alternative forms of media at kadalasan kung ano yung mga pinaka-actual reports nila o narratives nila on the events, no? as it happened, yung pinaka-raw na pwede natin mapagtunan ito ay yung mga diaries na narratives nila. Okay? So, take note of that. So, ito halimbawa, lagay natin sa picture itong sa Russia and Ukraine. Since it's a recent one, it's ongoing. Isa sa mga pwede natin punong source ngayon ay kung ano man yung mga i-disclose nila during sa mga debriefing sessions ng mga nakasaksi, nakakita ng war. Pero the first question is, sir, is that ethical? Kasi confidential dapat yung mga di ba, yung mga correspondence ng pasyente sa isang therapy. Okay, so if ever that the Ukrainian government declassifies those documents 50 years from the time that it was documented, doon lang siya pwede isulat. Okay? So, dito niyo po makikita yung kahalagahan din ng pag-aantay ng tamang panahon kung kailan pwedeng isulat ng maigi yung kasaysayan ng isang pangyayari. Kasi the more na mas recent pa siya at hindi pa siya totally conclusive, mas mahirap siyang isulat. Okay? So, naintindihan ko yung mga points ko. 3-3. Hello? Sige po. Let's now move on to the last presenter. Let's call in Donna. You may now start sharing.
Good afternoon po. Ang napunta po na libro sa akin ay Ilocano Responses to American Aggressions, 1900s to 1901. So, sa background of the author, William Henry Scott was an anthropologist and renowned historian on the Cordilleras and pre-Hispanic Philippines. Scott earned his bachelor's degree in Chinese language and literature from Yale University in 1951, MA in church history from Columbia University in 1958, and a PhD in history from the University of Santo Tomas in 1968. Scholarly works include Barangay, Looking for the Pre-Hispanic Filipino, Cracks in the Parchment Curtain, Slavery in the Philippines, and many more. To recognize Scott's lifetime of work in disseminating and educating honest Philippine history to the future Filipino generations, the Ateneo de Manila University awarded him the Tanglaw ng Lahi Award in 1994. This award recognized Scott's dedication in teaching history both within and outside the classroom. So sa summary po, dito sa background, nagbigay lang si Scott ng parang overview ng daily lives of Ilocanos before the Filipino-American War. Nabanggit niya rito yung mga common Ilocano occupation which mostly revolved on agriculture. Tapos nabanggit niya rin rito yung pagiging self-sufficient ng mga Ilocano. They were self-sufficient in all local needs except iron, and imports were luxury items of prestige value. Katulad na lang po ng mga European cloth, expensive beer, mga leather-bound books po, and more. Tapos, in terms of education naman, reading, writing, mathematics, and Christian values yung binigyang pansin nila. Given that the primary education was controlled by the Spanish clergy. Tapos, nabanggit din sa libro yung iba't ibang governor reports that often say na maganda o maayos yung law and order sa Ilocos provinces. Pero with the use of other sources, Scott has proven this to be false. Meron kasing newspaper accounts that frequently report on acts of violence na kadalasang nag-i-stem sa personal grievances katulad na lang ng um, ng ng acts of violence concerning sa mga lupa, ganun po. Tapos pagdating naman po sa pagiging progressive, hindi naman din nagpahuli yung Ilocos provinces. Town histories actually reveal a venerable tradition of public protest against perceived injustices sa iba't ibang lugar within the Ilocos provinces. And vegan was the natural seedbed for progressive ideas, and military records have not survived to indicate if any or how many Ilocano migrants were among Bonifacio's forces po no Philippine Revolution. Pero there were sources which validate the existence of the Katipunan faction in Candon. Ayun. Again, governor reports say na little to none yung existing revolts daw against Spanish presence yung nangyari. Pero again, it was proven to be false. And around 1899, the time when the American occupation was just starting, Scott called it the 18-month test of the Ilocanos' reactions to the American aggression. So, dito po sa part ng book na to, The Enemy Within, dito na papasok yung main topic ng libro, which is yung, again, Ilocano responses against the American presence. Sa pagsulat ni Scott, napansin ko na pinapahiwatig niya na there were elements within and nagkaroon ng two main reactions sa American presence. Ones that benefit the Filipinos and ones that benefit the Americans. So, ayun. Nagkaroon po meron pong mga defenders, and there were those who chose to take the enemy's side. So, sa Filipino benefit po, isa sa mga reactions nila is many Filipinos pretended to be friendly to the Americans for the sake of the Filipino collective. Dito papasok yung mga naging appointees sa mga barrio offices na nagsilbi bilang moles, mga counter agents or spies na nag-mute ng information mula sa kalaban tapos ipapadala nila sa mga fellow Filipinos po nila. And by November 1900s, the number of American forces in the Ilocos had increased, and mas nagkaroon ng surge ng Filipino traitors because Americans started to recruit them. And to respond to this, General Manuel Tino issued a proclamation that ayun po, all local residents who do not give immediate notice about plans of the enemy, those who reveal the location of the map, those who voluntarily offer to serve the enemy, those who capture revolutionary soldiers are sentenced to death. And I'd say naging mahina po yung parang jurisdiction ng Philippine Army nung time na to. And they protected themselves against traitors by threats, kidnappings, and assassinations. They conducted raids with military sanctions. Meron po nabanggit dito na si Tino daw po ay nagpadala ng mga tao niya para pumatay po ng mga traitor. Ganun po. And yung usual way of execution po nila sa mga traitor was ballowing. And so sa American benefit naman po, some Ilocanos took a while to make up their mind about the enemy and how to respond to the American presence. Mayroong cases kasi na may mga personal grievances yung ibang Filipino sa Tagalog troops. So initially, they welcomed the American presence, parang as a grudge. And Ilustrado gentry and rich businessmen often welcomed and entertained American prisoners in their home or inclined more with the American cause. Yung mga Filipino appointees then gave notoriety for the vigor of their cooperation. Some of them actually were reported to be really Americanized in short order, kumbaga. Madali po silang parang na-invite ng mga Amerikano sa side nila. And cases of personal actions against guerrilla forces are rare, as to suggest personal rather than patriotic motivations. Town officials were expected to serve American purposes from fear of personal punishment or loss of property. So, ang napansin ko pang theme dito is yung mga higher ups po na Filipino na tumitikip po sa mga Amerikano ay kadalasang pinagsaservan nila yung mga Amerikano for their personal interest lamang. And ayun, Filipino scouts offered services to the American Army. Binigyang diin po ni Scott yung pagiging guide or informer po ng isang Filipino na si Crispulo Pataho. Isa po siya sa mga nagsilbing guide and informer po sa mga Amerikano about sa mga Filipino insurgents. So, tuturo niya kung saan yung mga kampo nila, and he was highly valued by the Americans because of his great contributions to the colonial cause. And umabot pa nga sa point na in-order ni General Tino na patayin siya, offering the sum of 150 pesos for the presentation of his severed head. So, main takeaways, the book gave readers a concise outline of the resistance of the American invasion in Ilocos from years 1900s to 1901. Scott provided narratives about the daily lives of Ilocos as preface to the book, and Filipino reaction to American invasion was twofold. Others resisted against it and others willingly cooperated. And lastly po, Scott placed the Ilocano struggle into its larger context. It attributes to the idea that local history is just as rich and as important as national history, especially when dealing with our colonial past. Yun lang po.
Alright, thank you, Kyla. Okay, so Scott's book, no, it's a very good example of how you can frame local history into a national narrative. No? Kasi kagaya niyan, the title is very telling that the Ilocano response to American colonization is quite similar, at least, to how the rest of the provinces responded to American aggression during the dawn of the 20th century. So it's a matter of either fighting them upfront or collaborating with them. Ang kagandahan sa mga ganitong uri ng akda, kaya ng sinula ni Scott, nakita natin yung nuances. Ano yung differences ng response towards colonialism ng iba't ibang region. Specifically, kung ano yung nature ng region na yun. Like, they produce culturally, how do they respond to papers, and gaano sila persistent kung lumalaban man sila, gaano sila consistent doon, or kung gaano sila kabilis makipag-collaborate. So dito natin makita yung mga differences na yun. And that's the reason why Scott was awarded for that scholarly work, kasi he gave that the very real perspective na this is the social history of the Filipinos na hindi madalas natin makita sa mga akda ng mga foreign scholars na sumusulat tungkol sa Philippine history. Okay? So, very good presentation ni Kyla. I like the way you outline and took notes of the important parts of the book. Okay. So, ayan. Again, babagsak ulit tayo sa word na collaboration. No? Kasi yung word na yan ay kanina pa natin nababanggit na paulit-ulit kasi napaka-importante pag-usapan ng collaboration as an effective means of pushing the colonial agenda. Alright. Okay, so just to wrap things up, we're done with the updates for week 8. And on Monday, we'll finally have our last same class, no? And we're quite expected to extend considering na medyo madami presenters. No? Again, pakiusap, let's be wary of the time allotted for each presenter. As much as possible, compress your thoughts, compress your analysis, compress your insights. We are not looking forward to see excerpts of the material being read to the class. Kasi lahat naman na tayo expected na nabasa yan. What we're expecting from presenters is their own take of the readings, yung kanilang analysis, yung kanilang points, kagayang last Monday, di ba? Ito yung pinaka-efficient na araw natin with the presentations kasi lahat ng presenters on that day talagang pulido na ito lang yung ipe-present natin. Okay? So sana mag-take note po itong mga presenters for week 9 para masakop natin yung oras nang hindi masyadong mag-extend. Okay? Now about the lecture that you'll be using for the interviews sa pag-conduct ng mga oral history projects, I haven't talked to the chairperson yet, so just kindly wait for my advice kasi medyo busy na si chair and siya makausap regarding the matter. But once I get away from him, I'll tell you. Okay? Sige po, I'll just take a screenshot of those who attended. Alright. And with that, I'm now ending our session this afternoon. Thank you, and hopefully ay na-upload nila sa mga gigs this afternoon. Stay safe and see you on Monday. Goodbye, everyone.